Most of the time, well, let's begin again. Over the past 3 years, most of what I spoke about dealt with the direct connection to Africa. How Africa affected it and how it affected Africa. Today, I'm not going to change that much, but there is another thread in this thing. When a chef is cooking, the chef will add ingredients at a specific time. So that the taste of his, whatever he's creating, it tastes exactly the way he wants it to taste. And today, we're going to talk about something that is urgent, because the chef just put something else into the cooking. Whenever two armies meet, the best commander, the winner, is the one who finds the weakest link and exploits it with accuracy. And remember what I just said, with accuracy. The other side, the losing side, also looks for what they think is the weakest link. But their choice is not accurate. At least at the time when it's crucial that they're accurate. And today is the third strike in this war. Or should I say a continuation of the war, because this war never ended from the beginning. If you study wars and history, you'll see that they're all connected. When America came into being, it didn't start a war. Because the British, the people who came here were from Europe, and they were always fighting. The same people who came here as soon as they landed, the same people who went to America, came to America to colonize America. They started the wars with the local tribes, the people, indigenous people in America. So it's a continuous war. Europe's been fighting wars between each other for thousands and thousands of years. But nevertheless, we are down to the battle now in this millennium. And something happened the other day that, Israel struck Iran, and Iran took its time. And not only did it take its time, but it consulted with everybody. Russia, China, all the neighbors. And then it tells America its decision. We are going to strike Israel at this time and in these places. Imagine that now. A commander who's going to tell you and the commander on the other side, he said, I am going to strike you in this place. So prepare for the strike. And when they struck Israel, Israel thought it was prepared. Because they had America, France, Germany, all of the EU backing. And some of the Middle Eastern countries like Jordan backing it. But Israel still got hit hard. And they're still trying to keep people from knowing the damage that was caused by that hit. Now, the same people who are now... America gives Israel... Well, let's start with the process here. See, look, when you want to fight a war, especially like in a case between the U.S., Russia, and China, the U.S. looked at Russia and China and they decided that Russia was the weakest link. All the information told them Russia is the weakest link. And then they began to attack Russia. And then one day the Russians said, you know what, we are finished with this. We're going to hit back. And then they say, you see? Look how bad this Russia was. We were right. The whole world should back us against Russia. They forgot that the world was watching when they were supposedly fighting a stealth war. But the Russians and the Chinese knew that they were going to do this. So they had already planned ahead. They talked to each other, they discussed it but since 2008 now. Before 2008, when the US went into the Middle East to fight its wars for oil, the Russian and Chinese started sitting down and talking. In 2014, in 2008 actually, when the US economy almost created the whole world with the housing bubble that they call it. I will use the simplicity. It says housing bubble. The Chinese look and says this system is going to fail faster than we thought. So they started they increased the momentum of their planning. The Russians too. 2014, the Russians started preparing a direct conflict. Well, not started preparing, but they had the foundation laid. But then they started building the weapons they know they're going to need and creating a war plan. And creating a plan for war that they know they're going to fight. And how they're going to, not just for a war, but how they were going to fight this war. Initially, they said, you know what? We are going to end this war very quickly. And that's what they did. They went into Ukraine very quickly, and the Ukraine said, okay, we give up. We're not going to do And they had a contract to sign, so the Russians started withdrawing. They came to the table, talked, and decided on a deal. The the Russians started withdrawing from Ukraine, and then the English and the Americans decided, you know what? They can't hold Ukraine with 200,000 troops and protect Russia. We're going to renege on that. They're just holding off long enough so we can build up Ukraine army. And that's what they did. So now they started giving the Ukraine the weapons that they need to fight Russia. Because they thought that Russia was the weakest link. But it wasn't. And you can see what happened to Ukraine today. The next step now was they started pushing the China on Taiwan. And then they found that China had built up a significant military. And they said, let's hold off on that and let Israel go after Iran, which they thought Iran was the weakest link at the time. Today they found out that Iran is not the weakest link. That Iran, some of the weapons that Iran is making are more deadly and accurate and everything than they expected. And Israel now is just down to their nuclear weapons. That's all they got left. And the US is saying you can't use them. If you use them, we're going to have a bigger war than we want. So now, during the two wars between Israel and Iran, and the war between Ukraine and Russia, the French had to pull out of Africa because the Africans started pushing back. The Russians were in helping the Africans to kick the French out of Africa, kick the British out of Africa, kick the Germans and everybody else who were in Africa. Even the Ukrainians had soldiers in Africa robbing Africa. They were part of the European force that was in there robbing Africa. So everybody's being pushed out of Africa. But Africa now is still the weakest link because it's greedy leaders and it's corrupt people. You see, you got a place like Nigeria where the people will not throw out the greedy leaders because they are hoping that they can get a contract, a government contract from one of these greedy leaders that will make them rich also. They don't care about the other poor people living beside them. They just want for themselves. And that's the way it is all over Africa. In every village, as long as the alcalo or the village chief get his $100 from the booty that comes in, he doesn't care about the rest of the village. And then the villagers themselves, as long as they're eating, hey, I got food today. No preparation for their children's future. No food, no medicine and healthcare system, no education system. And for 60 years, over 60 years, as supposedly independent countries, independent states, these African states have been living in the same, what do you get, a culture They built up a culture around this dysfunction. And today, when everybody is in the process of preparing for all these wars that are being started by the Caucasians, Africa is not prepared. It is only due to the benevolence of, say, China and Russia that some manner of preparation is being made. And Russia and China cannot afford to do that, to build Africa alone. They have to have the Africans involved. But on the one hand, they are building. On the other hand, you got these chiefs and these government leaders who call them presidents, and their governors and cronies who are robbing the country, every state in Africa blind, and putting the money back into European banks. It's like the deal that Saudi Arabia made with America in that Saudi Arabia made for the oil. They essentially gave America free oil up until today. Up till today. Even the money that Saudi Arabia made from selling Africa, oil in Africa, that money has to go into the bank in America. It goes to an American bank directly. And then Saudi Arabia gets interest from the money that goes into the bank to build their economy. And then the money that they get, American companies are building Saudi Arabia, so they pay American companies. Free oil. That's how the system works. African leaders get money into the country. The money gets deposited into a French, German, British, American bank. And then they have to borrow money that the country is now responsible for repaying. Those poor people got to repay. And then they send their countrymen 20 to 45 years out of the country to go do slave labor and send back the money to Africa. That money now gets taken again. That weak link that is Africa is known now. And it can be exploited. And I warn people about this. I didn't go into this detail about it. That in 3 years, the Caucasian be back. The reality is that they're there. They didn't leave. And every day you can find advertisements, hey, come to Africa, because Africa is beginning to grow. Invest now and you can become a billionaire. And that's what Caucasians are advertising among each other. This dysfunctional leadership in Africa has to be, it has to be like a flood that's going to pass through the whole of Africa and wash them all away. And Africans are sitting and letting them stay in office. Look at Ruto in Kenya, the man in Uganda, Tanzania, the woman. And then you got them all across West Africa. The one in Nigeria. They knew he was, hey, it's got to change. I wasn't. I didn't intend to make a video about this until later. But like I said, things are changing quickly. This Israel now and America are thinking about what can they do to hit Iran, and they have come to a conclusion that is going to cause big problems. They haven't announced it to the world yet, but it's going to cause big problems when they do. Anything they hit in Iran, they're going to get hit back, and harder. But you see, this is all about what people are calling prophecy. And a rabbi that Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to before the rabbi died. The rabbi has told him, I expect you to conquer all of the land from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. And that's what Netanyahu is trying to do. The map already been prepared. That's why Saudi Arabia made a deal with them then. Because they were so sure that this is what Israel was going to do. They were trying to avoid Israel taking over Saudi Arabia as Israel planned. But it's not Saudi Arabia is going to save themselves now, it's Iran that's going to save them. And now the US has got them believing that, hey, you can't trust Iran. Because they're a different branch of Islam than you. That's funny. Because when Islam was fighting against the Europeans, they were all joined together. Even those in Africa who were Muslim, many of the African Muslim leaders were the ones who were called upon to conquer the Spanish and the Portuguese and the rest of Europe. The other Muslim nations were failing. Saudis and the Iranians and the Iraqis were failing. And they got an African leader to come and help them win against Spain. You gotta know your history now. Things are changing rapidly. I mean, sometimes things speed up quickly, and this is one of those times. That's why I made this video, because people are not expecting, this war in Ukraine is gonna last. Nope. This war in Israel is gonna end. Nope. I seen somebody said that the war in Israel is gonna last till 2027. But it's gonna go longer than that, because Israel is not gonna give up. They think that they can win. America is behind them. And they would bleed America dry just so they can win. They did it to the British and the French and the Germans. They destroyed Germany so they can have that land in Palestine. And if you don't believe me, read history. Anyway, for those of you who listen to my videos, prepare accordingly. Peace.